Hi, I'm Gina Fitt, and you've either purposely selected or surfed to Live Talk with Bern Moses. We're really excited to be here with you today and continue our discussion from last week, Bern. If you don't mind, I was interested by something that you said, that love, or saying I love you, is sometimes inappropriate, or we use the word quirk-uiops. Now, how can that be?
Well, very quickly, let's review Kurt Uiop.
Okay.
In that it's a admonition, a cliche, an aphorism that might lead us to mediocrity, and very probably does. Certainly, I love you should elevate, but we have to examine the possibility that it could denigrate. It's really interesting when you start talking about love. I have a thing called the life formula, and part of that formula is understanding that one of the primary emotions, of course, is love. And yet it's rather strange, paradoxical if you would, that the English language is the most complex language on the planet. Now, it doesn't feel that way sometimes when you encounter someone who speaks Chinese or Japanese or something, but the fact of the matter is English is accounted as the most complex language. And yet we only have one word for the most complex issue in our life, and that's love.
Oh, yes.
And so over the years I've heard people rush to the fact, well, yeah, but there's different kinds of love. And so in our research we said, yes, that's true. What kinds are there? Okay. Now, our audience can probably in their mind's eye participate in this and say, yeah, that's what I would have said. Because what we're hearing over and over, coast to coast, north and south, well, there's motherly love, and there's fatherly love and brotherly sisterly. There's a love between man and woman, sometimes referred to as a sexual love or compassion and passion. There's patriotism and nationalism, which is love of country. There's materialism, which is love of things. Unconditional love comes up a lot these days. We need to really address that issue sometime. In fact, we may have time today.
Great.
Self-love. It's rather fascinating, over the centuries we've been told that we can't love someone until we learn to love ourselves. That's very difficult to do because we know all of our shortcomings. You know what I mean?
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I never did very well at that until I got outside of myself. I say that on purpose based on the last show, and really practiced loving other people as we're going to define it, and found myself in there. And I really would challenge people to begin to re-examine that whole premise.
You had to get outside yourself.
To learn how to love in order to accept the fact that I could love myself.
To find yourself.
Yeah. See, we've been told that we've got to love ourselves first before we can love anybody, and we fall short oftentimes. And so I found that by reversing that, as a matter of fact, that's a lot about what praxeology is reversing things to see what happens. Follow what I'm saying? Because
can you give me an example?
well, statistically, we're not doing very well as a society. Okay? And so I'm saying to take every bit of wisdom that comes our way and say, yeah, but wait a minute. Oh, wait, well, hold on. Yeah, but. You know what I mean? Those kind of things. Not to be a cynic or skeptical, but to challenge, to wonder, to test, to examine. You know what I mean? To say, wait, maybe there's another way here. And that's what I did with that one issue. Love. Let's examine some more of this. The fact of the matter is those definitions we just gave, probably semantical faux pas again. Because if indeed there was a motherly love, all mothers would love a certain way, and they obviously don't. Fathers would love a certain way, and we know that they don't. Brothers and sisters, whoa. That can really be challenging sometimes. There's something amiss in all of this. To get to the real bottom line of it, I turned the clock back and back and back and back to the ancient Greek. Their intellect was incredible. If you've read Demosthenes, Plato, some of these authors, it's just incredible how they perceive things. And they were the originators of our language. And they looked out at the world and they saw these relationships. And they didn't even have the word love in their vocabulary. Didn't even have a word for it.
They didn't have the word love.
There was no love in there. They had 3 words, however. And I'm going to list them down this way. They had eros, philos, P-H-I-L-O-S, and agape. And I hope that's on camera okay. Eros, philos, and agape. Now, those of us who are in the know say, oh yeah, eros, that's that sexual love thing. eros, eroticism, and what have you. And
There
that's
seems to be a lot of that today.
yeah, oh yeah, it's all right too, but that's only part of the story. See, in other words, that's especially true since the Latins got a hold of it. They put that sexual connotation to it. The ancient Greeks saw, however, and we're defining it this way, that eros was a natural, which means it's always with us. It'll never be absent, but it's a natural, emotional state. Now, as an emotional state, that means that it has two things in it, both love and fear. See, eros is a natural emotional state that has both love and fear in it. Okay, now love is nurturance, caring for, contributing to. We'll define it as we go along. And then, of course, fear. And the reason that's so is that eros is about possessiveness. Okay? Now, that might sound familiar in our love language, possessiveness. In other words, my girl, my guy, my husband, that's my son, that's my daddy. And a little kid comes along and says, it's my daddy. Now you got a competition, sibling competition. My country, right or wrong. That's my house, that's my land. How many wars have been fought over my land?
Yeah.
Yes. Possessiveness, and if you possess something, you certainly have a right to control it. Does that sound familiar? Oh, yeah. See, in our relationships, one to the other, there's a lot of control, oftentimes, that one person will exert over another. Okay? Now, there can be some pleasure in this, because it is nice to have someone exclusive. It is nice to belong. Okay? However, if that goes awry, and you don't want to be possessed, you don't want to be a part of this, then how volatile, how dangerous, how painful can all of this be? Yeah, it's just terrible. As a matter of fact, it's eros that can contribute, of course, to the jealousy, possession, control. If I can't have you, what?
Nobody can
will.
have you.
How many times do you suppose that's said within a 100-mile radius of here today? Today. And how many of those end up, by the way, in stalking, in murders, actually? Yeah. Because once this enters, the pain will eventually endure, because it'll prevail in that relationship. Because once someone has over-exercised this, you're waiting for the next time. You know what I mean? Person says, I love you. After a while, I've known people who say, oh, really? What are you up to? What do you want?
Very cautious.
Yes. I mean, there is that element in there, see? And yet we're all seeking it. We all want it. Tragedy of it is, most of us spend our time looking for love instead of giving it. See, the key is loving, not in being loved. We can spend our whole life trying to be loved and miss out. We absolutely have influence over loving. Okay, and so we'll define
just
it.
Turning that back around on us,
Exactly.
giving us responsibility.
Then philos comes in here, another natural emotional state, which means, once again, it has both love and fear in it. Okay, but it's not about possession and control. It's about reciprocity. Reciprocity. In other words, the deal. In other words, I'll make the living, you raise the family. I'll take out the garbage, you do the dishes, I'll do this, you do that.
It's a contract.
Yeah. A lot of expectations in that. A lot of expectations. I remember how many holidays, for example, were ruined because of philos, expectations. You're going to go where for dinner? You're going to kill your mother. She will not be able to stand this. You've always come home. We expect you're home for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, what have you. Or a sweet little old lady sends out 100 Christmas cards, and everybody goes, oh, so filled with love. Doesn't get any back, and she's in a rage. See, that necessarily wasn't an act of love. It was a reciprocal philos act. Okay, nothing came back, and so she lost, and so now the pain sets in. See what I'm saying? A lot of pleasure in it, because it's great when it works. A lot of pain when it doesn't. I've had my life filled with men, for example, who have lost their businesses, lost their jobs, with substantial incomes. The best they could do was maybe half as much, and now they're abandoned by their families.
Oh.
That's quite common.
Yeah.
And it goes both ways. I'm not just criticizing women here. I've seen women expelled because they couldn't have children, or, you know what I mean? This kind of thing. Very, very painful. It's there. When you have an abundance of fear, in eros and philos, you develop a limerent person. Limerent. There may have been some limerence involved in the Nicole Brown case. In other words, the limerent person will stalk and kill. Okay, excuse me. It doesn't have to necessarily be the spouse, but anyone.
What does limerent mean? That's an unusual word for you to use.
It's a Greek. It has a Greek derivation to it, and it just means convicted. In other words, a strong sense of control and possessiveness and expectation. This is an interesting thing, by the way. I remember in my 6th wedding anniversary, and I'm not talking about 6 years or 6 months. I'm talking about 6 weeks. This was a long time ago. I was a young man, and I was one of those happily married types. Mm-hmm. And our 6th week's anniversary was coming up on a Friday. And I was just praying that she wouldn't think about it. And I had ideas of, flowers and dinner and candy and romance and what have you. And Wednesday she picked me up at work and we were walking home. It was delightful. And we were walking along and she said, "Guess what?" And I said, "What?" Not suspecting. And she said, "Well, Friday is our wedding anniversary. Mm-hmm. Are you going to take me out to dinner and have flowers and things?" And I said, "No, not now."
No.
Yeah, because what had just happened? I was all excited and anxious about making this contribution, this celebration, this surprise, and now all of a sudden it was expected. Now not doing it, I was in trouble. And it takes the joy out of the gift.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so when I said no, she said, "Oh, why?" It was okay. And I said, "Let's talk about it when we get home." And that evening we talked for hours about this, and we cut some deals to reduce and whenever possible to eliminate the expectations, the need to reciprocate in that relationship. And certainly we addressed some of these other issues about position and control. In other words, we cut a deal where I didn't expect dinner to be ready every day. Just didn't expect it. Didn't expect laundry to be done, didn't expect sex, didn't expect it. Now, therefore, every time dinner was ready, now if it wasn't, it was okay, but every time it was ready, it was oh. You know what I mean? That's nice. That's a wow, okay? Every time. Every time the laundry was done, thank you. See what I'm saying? In other words, and so now you're beginning to get into a situation where rather than a relationship, which I don't think ever works, see, relationships don't work, but we have an relationship. Now, if you get two people coming together, understanding some of these processes, to elevate, to support, to enrich, and to enhance one another. It's coming in this way, to elevate one another. Where could that relationship end up? Where typically two people come together with expectations, a need to control and influence and manipulate and maneuver, there's no way to go but down. Or we may survive. I mean, the relationship might endure, but there's a lot of pain and discomfort within it. Why do we endure it? Because the subconscious mind adapts to that. That's the way life is. The absence of knowing is more frightening than what is oftentimes. And so these kinds of things can get us into trouble. There is an alternative. There is an alternative, and that's agape. Now, big information here. Agape is not a natural state. It's supranatural. S-U-P-R-A. Super, not super, but supranatural state. Okay? Which means that it requires practice. It's cognitive. It's conscious. Okay? And rather than an emotional state, it's a volitional one. Volitional. Big, important words. Okay? Volitional means that agape is a commitment of the will. It's a decision. I love you, period. Understanding it, practicing it over the years, I have the right, to say, I love you. It doesn't matter how you feel about me. It doesn't what you say about me or do to me or say behind my back. I love you. There's no need to possess in that, no attempt to control, no bargain made. It's just a gift that is within my capacity, and so there's nothing but love there. Okay? Therefore, nothing but pleasure. Therefore, an incredible amount of power. Incredible amount of power. Not over you, but over myself.
Well, I guess you're saying that you you have no expectations for
Exactly.
their behavior.
Exactly.
So they're never going to disappoint you.
Exactly. Now, if you're in an intimate relationship, this unconditional love we talked about is pretty unlikely. because these are natural states. There's always going to be an element there of possessiveness and expectations, and it's valid. If agape is there, the control is granted, the possession is given, the expectation is fulfilled rather than demanded. For example, if I'm in a relationship with someone and I'm going to be held up, I expect myself or myself to call. That's the only proper thing to do. Why should I let that person be concerned and worry? See what I'm saying? And so the expectation is of me from an agape standpoint, because I'm volitionally committed to love and therefore elevate, support, enhance, and enrich in every way that I possibly can. And to be sure that if these things emerge, that they're addressed, okay? For example, it wouldn't be difficult at all for me in any relationship to say, you know, the other day, little eros popped up. You know, you smiled at that guy, and he smiled at you, and the little voice inside me goes, oh no. You mean? I felt threatened for a moment, but I think you understand. See, that would be comforting almost. You mean to say that, you know, a little bit of jealousy popped up in there, but I managed it okay, and I understand. So, I mean, it makes it all cleaner, is what I'm saying.
You know, this is very interesting, but I can't help but think that most of us are only familiar with these emotions. And can you give me an example of what it would be like to be in a relationship where people are mostly practicing, is that word you'd use, agape? Can you give me an example of that?
Okay, let's expand. For example, I think I probably have to go here, but I'm going to lay that here for reference. I'll pull it back over here in a second. If we could do in a moment a word graph, okay, of people, you probably would have a pretty substantial eros, because that's natural, and a good-sized philos. Can you see where that might be true in most relationships? A lot of expectations and possession and control going on.
That's what all the songs are written about. I'll die without you.
And then a little agape here that they heard about one time. You know what I'm saying? Pretty difficult to live this way. In the initial passion, you know, that might be okay. But after that kind of gets waned, if you would, then these other stuff begin to start emerge. How about this? If we could somehow, through understanding and practice, remember we talked about practice here last show? Get this agape real big. What would happen to the eros and philos? Because there's only a little place in the moment here.
Right.
That would diminish, wouldn't it? There'd be a little eros and a little philos left. Okay? And this would be a much happier relationship.
What are the chances, I mean, if I go home to my significant other and start practicing agape, is he going to look at me a little strange?
He might at first, but I'll tell you, people won't change because of you, but they may change for you. Now, that's a semantical issue. It's kind of like you can say, well, you ought to do this, and you ought to be kinder or gracious, more courteous, and what have you, and they may not budge. In fact, they chisel themselves in granite. Okay? But if you begin to exercise those qualities, in order to avoid losing them, they may make adjustments in your favor. Now, that's the surest bet you've got. See, here's what this is about. How do we get over here? How do we get over here? You know, for example, that if you take a prism and you shine light into it, what comes out the other side?
A rainbow.
All right. Clear facets of color. I think we can agree that the better the prism, the higher quality of the prism, the clearer the facets. There'd be more separation of color and what have you, right? Okay. If through the prism of our intellect, our cognitive ability to make adjustments, to practice, to develop, to grow, okay, if through the prism of that we shine love, and I'm talking here in terms of agape.
Or we make a choice.
Right. As we practice, we're going to go in this direction. Out the other side comes 10 clear facets of love that are practicable, manageable, and doable. They do require practice, however, because they're not natural states. These are all supernatural states. Okay? Now, what are they? There's 10 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Important information. Okay?
Okay.
A clear facet of love is courtesy. You know what courtesy is like when there's a courtship? You know, the held coat and the door, all this kind of stuff. After a while, get your own darn door.
Well, I'm going to sit here all day till you come get it
is
for
your
me.
arm broken or something? Yeah, courtesy. Here's the thing. If you are purposely, predeterminedly, cognitively courteous, okay, you will not be discourteous. If you're not, however, you will be. See, unless you're really determined to be courteous, you will be discourteous because you'll slip into a survival mode and you'll react inappropriately. There'll be a rudeness that'll emerge. Follow what I'm saying? Is it possible to do this? Yes. I've been married many, many years. And I think that these women, okay, will tell you that they cannot remember when I was ever discourteous to them. You just don't do that, okay? Kind. See? Kindness is a facet of love. Purposely kind, because if you're not purposely kind, you will be from time to time unkind. Patient. Patient. Very important. See, what is patience? A practiced ability to not be impatient. And it does take practice. You've got to be aware of this. How does this get violated? I remember some years ago, I was invited out to a dinner with another couple. My wife and I were in attendance, and we were going to go out to dinner and then go to theater. We were driving towards the restaurant, and we'll call him Joe. Jody actually was his name, but that's okay. He kind of leaned back. He was driving, and we were in the back seat, and he said, it was something to this effect. We went to see Dancing with Wolves Thursday. It's a good flick. And we were in agreement because we'd seen it. And Pam, okay, his bride, said, it's not Dancing with Wolves, it's Dances with Wolves, and it wasn't Thursday, it was Wednesday. Okay? I don't know where that comes from, payback or aggravation or something, but that was the end of the evening. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To what end was all of that? So it was Wednesday and not Thursday. And so it was dances instead of dancing. You know what I mean? But it killed Jody's evening. And then we got to the restaurant, and he didn't contribute much to the rest of the evening, and so she got upset because he wasn't contributing. You know, thank God for the theater. Otherwise, it would have been a terrible evening. All I'm saying is we do that all the time to one another, and we can just stop it. We can just stop it. So I'm not going to do that anymore. That's a supernatural, volitional choice to practice courtesy, kindness, and patience, sincerity, humility is one. Now, humility in this case isn't prostrating ourselves in front of someone saying, I'm no good, worthless, and low down. But humility is lightening up, not taking ourselves quite so seriously. You know what I mean? In other words, not addressing an issue when you've been hurt or offended, but waiting until another time perhaps, and then addressing it effectively.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Keeping the volatility down. Then over here, there's selflessness. We talked about that last week. Selflessness, which appears to be the highest form of selfishness. Selfless people getting what the selfish people want, which is esteem and peace of mind. Powerful, powerful force. Selflessness, generosity, not just with our fortune and our assets, but much more importantly with our time and our attention. If there's one thing each of us needs is more time and attention, just to have someone sit and listen, not try to solve the problem, just listen, empathize, understand, be there. Powerful, powerful. Great way to practice is with little children, and if we have time, I'll get back to that. Generosity, good temper. See, I've never been able to figure out why someone will have a bad day at the office and bring their temper tantrum home. I mean, take it out on the street, do it to a stranger. But see, you don't, because you don't know how they're going to react. But you can depend upon the family to absorb your abuse, because that's the way it is. It shouldn't have to be that way. You know? I know there's old philosophies out there that say you've got to express your temper, you got to get the anger out, or it'll suppress itself. And I'm saying, no, there's another way. There's another way. And then there is, let's see, there's one more in here. Having difficulty, generosity, good temper, selflessness, and I'll let it pass. It'll come to me in a minute. I don't know which one of these are priorities. One is as important as another. They all deserve practice. I can imagine having a courtesy day. You get up in the morning and say, this is my courtesy day. And I'm going to be as courteous as I can be all day. Kindness day, patience day. There is one thing, however, that should be practiced in company with every one of these every single day, and that's forgiveness. Forgiveness. Remember we talked about Kurt Yuyops earlier? One of the big Kurt Yuyops of our life is forgive and forget. That's a lie. We don't forget. There's no erasure in the human mind. There's a lot of misunderstandings about this, and we could probably do a whole show. In fact, I promise we will, just on this one issue, on forgiveness. Yeah. There's a lot of misunderstanding about it, a lack of tools so that we can't do it effectively.
Difficult issue.
Yes, very, very difficult. And I'm going to promise to come up with this other facet of love. I know it just like I know my own name. Isn't that fascinating? I never work off notes.
Well, Bern, as I look at this list, it becomes a little overwhelming to me, and frankly, I feel afraid that I'm not up to the task of I mean, I could do courtesy for a day or kindness for a day, but to be juggling every moment, from moment to moment, 10 facets of love, how am I going to do this?
Oh, you don't have to. Yeah, don't even worry about it because you're doing okay so far. Just take a courtesy day and a kindness day. Don't worry about courtesy. A little bit it'll stick.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Ben Franklin had a system of 13 characteristics. He said that he would practice patience 1 week, okay, and then frugality, and then enthusiasm, humility. Notice he'd take a week at a time, and then when he got through the 13, see, he could go back and do them again. It'd be 4 cycles a year, okay, and then he kept doing it all of his life, and now here we are talking about him. And that's the way he did it, because a little bit of it sticks. You know what I mean? As you go to the next one. Now, as I say, none of these are going to be totally fulfilled until they're accompanied with this. So you can't be really courteous unless you're at peace with the world and your past. You know, because old stuff will bubble up and cause you to be discourteous. So this is terribly, terribly important.
So I would imagine that one thing we need to do is forgive ourselves. And just like you can forgive yourself tonight for not thinking of what...
I got it.
You got it now,
yes,
great.
I told you I'd get it. Guilelessness. Guilelessness. Probably one of the more challenging ones, but it's living with one another without guile, without the psychic secret that does so much damage. One of the great big lies of the universe is, I wouldn't want to tell her that, it would hurt her so. And that's what hurts, the not knowing. I went to a seminar some years ago where it was an exercise in guilelessness, revealing ourselves totally, transparency, candor, authenticity. It was incredible. There was so much love developed in that place, you could cut it with a knife. Oh, it was great. Awesome. And we'll spend time on doing some of that too. You can't talk enough about this. I do know that love is a fascinating subject because it's what makes the world go round, and yet sometimes it's made it go flat, and if we don't understand it. And some of these issues can make a big, big difference. I think it's time.
Great.
For us to say.
Thanks for spending time with us today, Bern. Now, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, is there a way that they can?
Yeah, they can call 1-800-661-3490. And let's let that suffice for right now, because I think we probably need to tell everyone to go make it a good day for someone. That way 2 people would have a nice day. 2 lives would have been enriched and enhanced. And we'll just say thank you for listening and sign our note. Bern
Moses. Thank you, Bern.
Thank you.